Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. I welcome you to The Takeout. How do you recognize something that doesn't exist? How does something exist without being recognized? A Palestinian state does not exist. Yet France, Britain, and Canada say they intend to recognize one in September. Starvation bordering on famine has existed in Gaza for months, yet that remains unrecognized by the Israeli government and was, until very recently, not much recognized by the White House. But the plight of civilians in Gaza who die by the dozens daily from malnutrition or from wounds suffered trying to obtain what little food that does trickle into the enclave has become too pronounced, too harrowing to ignore. It must, therefore, be recognized. Today, President Trump's top diplomatic envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Witkoff will travel to Gaza tomorrow, a first for him. The White House says it will release $30 million in aid to Gaza. This is a recognition that suffering is real, and it is also a step away from Israel's lament that its hands are tied by the brutal influence of Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is a problem. The terrorist group still runs much of what's left of Gaza, and its indifference to civilians there has become so obvious that for the first time, the 22-nation Arab League this week condemned its murderous October 7th assault on Israel and called for Hamas to disarm. This Arab League gesture imagines a post-Hamas reality for Gaza and the prospect, however dim, of a Palestinian state that includes it and the West Bank. Palestinian statehood, even in its current mirage-like status, has found its way, believe it or not, into trade talks with the United States. President Trump says it's getting in the way of conversations with Canada. There was lots of trade news to sift today as tomorrow's deadline for new deals approaches. Kelly O'Grady is standing by to help us with all of that. But we begin with Nancy Cordes at the White House. Nancy, this was a significant day in the conversation in this White House about what's going on in Gaza and what it intends to do about it and the eyeballs it wants to have on it.
It was indeed, Major, because you now have the president's special envoy to the region, Steve Witkoff, and the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, planning to actually go into Gaza tomorrow and to see the conditions there for themselves. Now, it's not clear whether they are going to have free reign to go wherever they want, or whether they will basically be led through specific areas by the Israelis. But nevertheless, it is an indication that there is a growing concern here within the White House about the conditions, the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. Also, as you mentioned, this $30 million that the president has previously announced is now going to be released, and it's going to be given, the White House says, to a somewhat controversial, frankly, U.S.-Israeli operation that is delivering food and other aid into Gaza. International observers would like that money to go to an international aid organization. They argue that that this U.S.-Israeli operation is not getting the food to where it needs to go. But nevertheless, it is a sign that this president, who has talked from time to time, Major, about the concerns that he has about the Palestinian people in Gaza, has said that he wants to push the Israeli prime minister to do more, now might be ready to put his money where his mouth is on that front.
And it's even complicating our trade conversations, is it not?
It is, especially because you've got countries like Canada and France going much further than the White House would be comfortable by saying that they are ready to declare Gaza a state, to declare Palestinian statehood. The president wasn't happy with that. He lashed out at Canada in a Truth Social post earlier today. He said that that complicates U.S. trade negotiations with Canada. Unclear what one might have to do with the other, aside from the fact that it is something on which he disagrees with the Canadian Prime Minister. But he has been in the Oval Office talking about an unrelated event, Major, and a few minutes ago he was asked if that's a deal breaker when it comes to U.S. trade talks with Canada on the eve of this August 1st deadline. And he said, no, it's not a deal breaker, but he would like to see Canada take a different course.
Nancy Cordes on the North Lawn of the White House. As always, thank you so very much. William F. Wechsler joins me now. He's the Senior Director of Middle East Programs at the Atlantic Council. William, it's great to have you with us. You heard my introduction, laying out things as they are. Is this something that we should regard as a significant step by the White House and maybe one that's away from the Netanyahu government, or do you still see them very tightly aligned on what is or isn't happening to civilians in Gaza?
I think that President Trump has a decision to make about how aligned he's going to be with Prime Minister Netanyahu's policies. You've seen changes in just the last couple of days from President Trump saying that the starvation was real and calling out Israel's government for these actions, to today calling out Hamas for its actions that contribute, obviously, to the situation. President Trump started this dynamic, unfortunately, with a decision to call for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza some months ago. There are
talking about moving all the Palestinians out
and creating a new Riviera in Gaza. Unfortunately, some of the most dangerous voices inside of Israel took him up on that offer. And that's
gave them a kind of a permission structure.
Exactly. And that's contributed to the decisions that Israel has made.
And hardened that hard-right faction within the Netanyahu coalition.
It is. And the center of gravity for much of this war is actually not in Gaza, not in Lebanon, but it's in the cabinet meeting room in Jerusalem. Now, President Trump is absolutely right in that the fastest way to end the war is for Hamas to agree to give up the hostages and to commit to a ceasefire and release its grip on Gaza. That has always been the desired outcome here. So he's absolutely right about that. But it's also the case that Israel made a decision starting back in March to restart the war after the ceasefire and intentionally to restrict aid. The idea was unfortunately a bad strategy. The idea that people had in Israel was that there would be more pressure on Hamas from the starving people and the terrible situations that we see in Gaza than there is on Israel. And the reality is that the leaders of Hamas don't care about the Palestinian people. And at the end of the day, based on pressure from the rest of the world, most likely Israel is going to care more.
Is it significant that I noted the Arab League denunciation of the October 7th assault and the call for Hamas to disarm? It seems to me that that's been a long time coming and is a signal that those in the region, not Israel, are seeing a time when Hamas is no longer running Gaza.
That is the only long-term solution here. The overall rejectionist narrative, the overall resistance narrative that has driven Hamas and other entities inside the Palestinian community has to come to grips after 80 years of the existence of Israel. And until that happens, there's not likely to be a lasting solution to that. But if that happens, Israel has to be in a position to accept that reality and finally move back towards the two-state solution, which is the only lasting continuing security situation for both peoples.
And probably the Israeli government looks at that Arab League statement as something of a note of progress.
It should. It should indeed. It should have come earlier.
Of course.
It would have been better if the Arab countries would have had a common voice asking, demanding Hamas to put down their weapons, release the hostages, and for their leadership to leave, just like the PLO left Lebanon many decades ago. That's what actually the Palestinian Authority leadership actually has called for some time ago. So it's nice that we're seeing the Arab League start to take steps in this direction. But it's also understandable. It's very difficult for them when their people see daily, hourly images on television, on social media of suffering of Palestinians.
Not to first blame the Israelis and not Hamas, but clearly there is complicity, if not bloody fingerprints, for Hamas all over this situation.
Hamas is the one that started the war on October 7th. I landed in Israel the morning of October 7th when that happened, and I landed to see an Israel that had fundamentally changed. And Israel is still that country that has fundamentally changed.
And remains traumatized politically and otherwise.
Absolutely.
William Wechsler, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Joe.